Hi, teachers. We will try to understand today a lesson in which we are going to show how to develop critical thinking using any content that is being prescribed by CBSE. I have taken the content from life science area and the topic is transport in plants. You know that the government of India has made a policy in 2020, new education policy, in which they have emphasized that all teaching should help children to develop different kinds of life skills. Critical thinking is one of the most important life skill that a child has to learn right from the lower class. So in this, I am attempting to show you how you can develop a lesson and then help children to learn critical thinking. Come, let's examine that. In this particular presentation, I am trying to give you a simple thing called D3 system. D3 system, which has been practiced by me for several years, is well known and it contains three important areas. The first D start with diagrams, and then second one dialogues, the third one discussions. So we use the diagrams given in the textbook, or we can use the diagrams made by the teacher, or we can use the diagram from any source. And then based upon the dialogue to the diagram, you will have to use number of questions on the diagram, and that will lead to small dialogues. Dialogues may be right or wrong. It will certainly contain some information, and then discussions to say what is right, what is wrong, and then you come to the conclusion. This type of teaching goes on a cyclic manner. You can start with a dialogue or you can start with a discussion, but ultimately these are the three main things that we use in the lesson. I have selected the topic transport in plants. This can be used for any class level, but I have used it for class 9. Objective is critical thinking. Though I am using the content transport in plants, I am trying to help children to develop critical thinking. In this, the most important areas are children will be able to understand the importance of transport in plants, the role of xylem and phloem in plant transport, and they analyze the mechanisms of water and nutrient transport in plants. See, this analyze, when we say, that requires more questioning and then understanding the system, and then try to know that means understand. They analyze and then understand, and they evaluate the adaptations of plants for efficient transport. You know that plants have various adaptations, especially xerophytes, plants that grow in the water deficient area, how the plants develop different types of adaptations to help in preserving water, and that is in the process of transport in plants. So all these things are possible. That means they analyze, they evaluate. This involves questioning, answering, understanding, decision making, and then finally come to a conclusion. As I told you, This involves mostly analyzing the entire process of transport in plants. That means they have to look at the diagrams or even the natural plants. You can bring a plant to the class. You can, as a teacher, you have right to use a diagram or a living material. Then it involves analysis, breaking down complex information like osmosis, diffusion, and active transport in plants into smaller parts by using questions, and then children would discuss that answers. Inference, drawing conclusions based on evidence using different diagrams. We can use about 5 to 10 diagrams to show osmosis, diffusion, and active transport. With the help of those diagrams, children can understand, then come to some conclusion, or we can say inference, about the process of transport in plants using the diagrams. Explanation, providing clear and logical reasons for a phenomenon of transport in plants. We have say transport in plants is possible by three important processes, as you know. It includes absorption of water from the soil by the process of osmosis, maybe diffusion, and then that will be taken, uploaded into the plant via xylem, and then it reaches the leaves. It may be 100 feet long or 10 feet long or 5 feet long or 1 feet long, and then the plant will get water, nutrients that is required for its growth. So, if you try to analyze the three processes, children will be able to understand, and the diagrams will help them to internalize the concept of transport in plants. Then evaluation, assessing the value of or quality of information given in the text and generated in the class during discussions. See, textbook might have given you information on osmosis, on diffusion, and concepts on transport in plants. So you can evaluate how discussion happens in the classroom and then what the textbook information has given. That means children will have a chance to compare what they arrived in the class by discussions, seeing the diagrams, and then what has been given in the textbook. This is an important step. Communicating by writing in their own way. So here children use their knowledge learned by discussions and also perhaps by reading the book. So you can tell them to express that in their own words by writing or by asking simple questions. I've just broken down the way we can approach the lesson. It may be 45 or 50 minutes. Introduction about 10 minutes. Hook, that means what is that we have to use here? Either we can use a real plant. Mostly I suggest use diagrams. Plant, ask students to identify different parts. Then context, explain that plants need to transport water, nutrients and sugars throughout their bodies. If they identify roots, stem, leaves, flowers and all these parts require water, nutrients and sugars throughout their bodies for growth. This you must be able to tell children by discussion. Question, how do plants transport these essential substances? So this is a hook or the introduction. It is, you can, as a teacher, you know how to use the words. At some part of the lesson, after 10 minutes of introduction, you need to have a direct instruction. That includes your explanation on xylem and phloem. Explain the role of xylem, water and mineral transport, and phloem, sugar and nutrients in the transport. See, here we are not talking only the transport of water. We are also trying to tell the transport of nutrients, sugar, made in the plant to different parts. Water can go up, sugars will have to come down via phloem. So show the diagrams, explain them by using the arrows. Mechanisms of transport, that means describe the process of osmosis, diffusion and active transport in plants. For this again you have to use the diagrams. My suggestion is keep the diagrams ready in a chart, or if you are good in drawing on the blackboard, try to draw. Many drawings will have to be used in this lesson. Visual aids includes especially diagrams and illustrations to support explanations. Illustration means the real situation. You can show the plant and then ask them many questions. So this lesson involves using diagrams, using questions, very simple questions, and then discussions. It may be in groups or individuals. To make class little more interesting or little more deeper understanding, guided practice, that means you take some case studies. In this case, provide a scenario where a plant is experiencing water stress, that is in desert plants. Show the diagrams, or if you can show the video where plants are grown in deserts and how their parts are modified. Try to give a case study on that. Analysis. Ask students to analyze how the plant's transport system would respond to the stress like extreme heat or cold. See, plants not only grow in desert, plants grow in also very cold areas like Himalayas, where snow is much throughout the year. There also plants grow. How do they manage their requirement of water? Try to discuss this. This is for deeper understanding of the topic transport in plants. Again, transport involves movement of water from one part to other part, nutrients, and then the food prepared in the plant, the different parts. That is the stress. You have to analyze and tell them. Sometimes you can have a group discussion. That means make children to have small groups of 4 to 5. Let them discuss each one of them in the group, and then let their discussion and their conclusion be talked in the classroom directly. You can modify that and you can arrive at certain conclusions on transport in plants. Use about 10 minutes and give them questions. These questions should have been prepared by the teacher earlier. That will help for critical thinking. How do plants regulate loss during transpiration? Then what would happen if plant's xylem tissue was damaged or removed? Or if the plants get something like a pesticide in the water, what will happen to xylem or phloem? That is, will the transport system in the plant be disturbed by addition of any chemicals that is dangerous to the plant? So then children will start thinking, and that is where we come to critical thinking. How do plants adapt to different environmental conditions to optimize transport? Transport should happen, So there may be extreme of temperatures and rainfall, and then all different kinds of extremities that will happen in the nature. How do plants manage that? Their transporting plants. You can make children to think on that. Return reflection. The best thing is at the end of about 5 or 10 minutes, let children write 1 or 2 sentences in their own words what they have understood. This is not the questions given in the textbook, but the questions made by the teacher. That will help them to have the concept well rooted in their brain, and also they would have thought in a different way than what the textbook has given to them. That's where we come to making children to develop a skill called critical thinking. You know, as a teacher, that the NAP 2020 advises 2 types of evaluations or assessment in the class. One is called formative assessment, that is, observe the student behavior, student participation during group discussion and critical thinking exercises. That means you would have asked several questions in the class. One of the important area as a teacher is whatever the visual materials we use, on that we have to ask several simple questions that will stimulate thinking in the children, that is beyond the textbook material, and that is the formative evaluation, the formative assessment. The second is summative assessment. You give a homework where children can express and write in their own words about transport in plants. You may connect the question to 3 important processes as discussed earlier, that is diffusion, osmosis, and then active transport. This will help them to, or you, process what has happened in the class, and out of 40, maybe 10 or 12 children show high level of critical thinking. Others may require more practice. A small conclusion on this presentation: by incorporating components of critical thinking in this lesson, it encourages students to analyze complex information on transport in plants and then evaluate evidence using diagrams of different plant adaptations, explain phenomena of transport in plants, and answer some MCQs. Lessons of this type will help children to practice active listening, that is, paying attention to different perspectives and arguments. When you are showing the diagrams, children will have attention, and then children will be listening to your small questions. That is, children should learn active listening. Ask questions, challenge assumptions, and seek clarifications. Textbook might have given one sentence. For example, osmosis is a process of water moving from one part to other part, where there is the difference in the concentration. That may be explanation given in the books, but how to evaluate that? By using diagrams. That will help them to, by asking small questions. Seek diverse resources to collect the information. It means it may be a discussion, it may be getting information from these days you get the AI helping in ChatGPT or Copilot or any other AI like Gemini or anything, gives you a lot of information. So make children to read those things and then try to understand much more on the topic you are giving. Take your time. Tell students to avoid on the spot discussions. Instead, take time to evaluate information and consider different options, more reading and group discussions. It helps a lot, and this approach helps students develop a deeper understanding of transport in plants and cultivate essential critical thinking skills. It's a very simple way I have explained, but I have not used diagrams. As a teacher, you might be able to understand what I am talking. Try to use that.